Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome to the 91st audio chat on the Q News Patriot Rumble Channel series. I am the Q News Patriot, joined again by financial visionary and principal for Sagesse LLC, Miss Barbara Guth. My name is SG Anon. For the audience out there, you're going to recognize Miss Guth as one of the first voices to come on the Q News Patriot and talk about the spiritual, physical, monetary marriage process that all of us seem to be living through right now. The Great Awakening is redefining what it means to not only operate in ethic and morality with one another, but it's causing us to reevaluate and re-examine a number of the models and attitudes that we've utilized certainly in the last 100 years, but potentially back 200 or 300 years around the concept of economics and value exchange with one another. Ms. Guth has an interesting vision and I think a very unique perspective on a great deal of this due to her background and current projects that she's associated with. I'm glad to have her back on the show. Ms. Guth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, SG. It's really an honor to be with you again, as always.
Well, the honor is really mine, if I may, and I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I'm just very excited and enthusiastic about the conversation today. You know, when we last connected, we had a pretty spirited discussion about how the spiritual component, the attitudinal component, and even in some regards, maybe by extension, the morality component of life here in the world, how that blends with the necessity of commerce and value exchange, which needs to happen between, one another, not only within our communities, but even at that nation state level across boundaries and borders. It's my understanding that a lot has happened since the last time we talked, and it's been a minute since the Q&P audience has gotten to hear things from your side. Do you mind to give us a quick Reader's Digest summary of where you came from again and set us up for where we're actually going with our discussion?
Yes, actually, I've been in the healthcare world and then in the financial world for the last 20 years, particularly in the venture capital arena, or entrepreneurial investment. And so, but at the same time, I've done a lot of work regarding trying to understand how to engage the biggest problems on the planet just on my own. I really want to understand what are the big problems, how are we engaging them, what are the technologies that are going to really change the game and kind of make this leap, this evolutionary leap that we're all feeling, that I think a lot of us are feeling and a lot of us are expecting and waiting for. And so there's a big leap that's at hand. And I've always felt like there were going to be tools that were going to be coming to humanity that really needed to be protected in a particular way that our current structures are not doing. So I was really committed to understand these big sectors that are problematic for humanity. How are we engaging them now? And then how can we actually kind of short circuit some of these dynamics so that we can actually expedite our evolutionary process? I guess I could put it that way. So in the process of that, I ended up creating a financial structure. I said, that's what I've written 2 books about and various publications, but it's really been about how do we make this leap, and primarily in finance, because I was in the entrepreneurial world. I really noticed that a lot of the inventors, the visionaries, the real creators on the planet that are bringing the really sacred stuff, they really need protected in a way that we haven't before in finance. So I really wanted to create something that could help those people in this particular dynamic. I can go elaborate a little bit more if you like about just diving into what I've done, or
Well, when we talk about protecting inventors and innovation, fundamentally, I think what you're talking about is the protection of and the encouragement of the creative process, the inspiration process from the human being, and then translating that safely, effectively, and fairly into an extension of commerce. Am I over the line suggesting that comparison?
No, absolutely. It's about the manifest. How do you make that manifest? And how do you do that in a way that actually honors that original intention, that original impulse from creation into the inventor, the visionary? How do you honor that in a way so that it actually becomes purely expressed, and so it can reach what it was intended to do? And so right now, the whole financial industry isn't particularly committed to that. It's been committed to other things based on where we've been in our level of consciousness with finance. So we're in a really sweet spot right now. I'm kind of jacked about, because as much as it's painful to watch the implosion of a lot of the systems that are happening, that's extremely painful. But at the same time, it's helping people to understand, wow, there's some real holes in our vision about how we're approaching. And if we want to co-create this destiny together, how can we create a system that ensures that that can happen?
You know, if I may, Miss Guth, you had sent me a copy of what amounted to a draft of a white paper or a submission of a white paper outline. And with your permission, I'd like to read from that white paper just a paragraph here because I think it encompasses and encapsulates exactly what you're talking about. With respect to the financial structure or construct that you've sort of brainchilded out and designed, written a couple of books about, and have certainly been very actively involved with in the last 12 months. The paper states, with the intention of enabling cohesive harmony throughout this process, referencing the process from private inventors and innovators through the venture capital landscape for funding. This entity, and I'm leaving that blank on purpose, can move with ease between micro and macro applications within the investment life cycle. It enables this through the use of patent pending blockchain structure, coupled with the use of sovereign trust funds. This new alliance can deliver appropriate funding at critical moments throughout a product life cycle while maintaining the alignment necessary to ensure and protect inventors and national sovereignty. This dynamic strengthens the introduction of new innovation while avoiding catastrophic events such as forced insolvency or acquisition by multinationals which do not serve sovereign interests. What is so powerful about that paragraph, and I'd really like for you to expound upon, how this translates to understanding mentally, how this works. What I find incredibly powerful about this is you've managed to hit the three most important relevant underpinnings, I think, for the entire concept of economic and value exchange worldwide and indeed in the course of human events. You have digital and intangible, the emerging blockchain reference. So that's clearly a reference to, the very advanced technological financial capabilities that are coming. And we've seen that outward in development through a number of things, both from the government pulpit and in the private sector. You also talk about sovereign physical funds in the form of trust funds. And we know that a physical digital landscape has to be the answer. You're not going to get humanity on one page or the other. It has to be a marriage. And then you also have national sovereignty, which I translate fundamentally as national security in many regards, because finance and control of finance indeed is what has caused empires to rise and to fall. Do you care to expound upon this paragraph for us?
Yes, I mean, really, it was an evolution. This whole process has really been an evolution for me as well, because I want to start out before I get into that. I just want to be really clear. So this is, although it's about finance, it's really about creation. And because we're all creators, it really is going to impact all of us, because we have to be free to create, and we can't be worried about having things taken from us in the current dynamic or forced out of our hands just because we need some investment capital. Okay, that dynamic really, really has to change. And so I would say that this is called the Sovereign Revenue Trust entity that I created. It's a special purpose entity, if you want to call that. It's really a hybrid, and it's really merged because you've got the whole cryptocurrency scene going on over here with its concerns, right? Good and bad. There's a lot of things going on with that. There's a war going on and all of that. Then you got the venture capital scene over here. That's its own situation. Okay. And when you look at all of this, it's like, is it serving where we want to go? So what I really did when this downloaded into me as far as seeing what this structure was, me naming it and all of that, I actually had to fight with with the trademark office to really ensure that those terms were used. But it's an anti-theft, it's an anti-greed, and it's an anti-tyranny structure. Okay. So I've been looking at all this because I was in finance, but my interest is more in peace and peace building and in freedom. I mean, those are the things that I'm most focused on in my life, and looking to what prevents that from happening and how finance gets in the way of that. So I realized this whole structure I needed to take the best of both worlds. And with the structure originally, I was really focused on what can I do to counter this venture capital model that forces an exit. It forces an inventor to make a choice of either getting acquired or going public. You can't, generally, in a 46 trillion market sector, you're forced to sell out. And I've always not been comfortable with that, and it's only heightened as I've watched what's gone on over the years. But that's not a situation. Just because you need capital, you shouldn't have to sell out. What you've envisioned in your vision. And so that whole thing, I realized, okay, when the download came, I'll put it that way, it was a very clear thing about how to do a particular financial structure. And I was really surprised about that it hadn't been done before in that way, and certainly not institutionalized. Okay, so there was that piece of it. And then I realized, oh, I'm getting my patent. I can't get a patent unless I have it tied to technology, which is a whole nother subject. But that happening, I realized, okay, how can I do this blockchain? I knew blockchain, that's going to be the key. And so I realized, even though the cryptocurrency scene, which I wasn't particularly comfortable with, and still I'm working through, there's a lot of things that are, the mark of the beast, CBDCs. I mean, all of those things are valid concerns. And then how that can get in the way of making this come forward. So between the combination of tying the blockchain with an intention to protect our creators, our inventors, our visionaries, those two things create this whole new hybrid thing that allows all this incredible stuff to happen. Okay. And I restructured it initially as far as venture capital, as far as different stakeholders of various things. And I realized, wow, this thing actually enables better outcomes for everyone involved. Okay. And then I reverse engineered it even further. And when you're talking now, it's only been recent that I got into the sovereign fund thing, because through all this, I've been on several podcasts, and I really wasn't focused on the cryptocurrency side. It's not my scene. I'm in venture capital, I'm in entrepreneurial finance, and that's what I care about. I care about the creator and making sure they are honored. Okay. And so, but over time, I kept getting this question, crypto. It's like, oh. And interestingly, a gentleman from the UK in finance, 30-year veteran in finance, reached out to me and said, "You're onto something here." And he goes, "And you need to understand the crypto piece." I'm like, So I said, "All right, I give, you know." And so pumping me full of information, just pumping it, just information. It's like, okay, I finally got a handle on this. It's like, oh my gosh, I actually really did need to understand this, because crypto's coming whether we like it or not, and how that happens is a very different scenario. But that's coming, and we do need a peer-to-peer dynamic that is not mediated by somebody with a different agenda. There's lots of institutions that come in the way between things, and we don't need all these middlemen. So the peer thing was really important, and the transparency as well. Okay, those are huge things. You've got to keep those signatures and the transactions together. That is the security, and then enables the transparency that is being promised with the Bitcoin, or not the Bitcoin, but the blockchain. So anyway, that all transpired. It's like, okay, then I realized, well, I finally get this myself. I need to do a white paper so that I can help people understand where this thing is, where it fits, how it's different. In some ways, is a security, is a commodity. I don't want to get into all that. But the key is, so I've always been concerned about power dynamics, and I apologize if I'm jumping around here, but power dynamics are a real big reason for problems on the planet. So being able to rebalance those dynamics is really, really important nation to nation. And so as we move out of this, the old construct that is imploding around us, there's so much opportunity. This is why I really am excited, because in spite of all of this, we have such an opportunity to consciously co-create what's going to work and drive the future we want. Do we want to be free? We got to figure out a way to do that. Because even if you are free with the structures, you still have to change the mindset. Otherwise, you're going to recreate the same thing you just got out of. Okay, so it's really important that we understand that aspect. And I would say after that, after the white paper went out, right away, I started getting contacted by indigenous sovereign funds. And it's like, whoa, that's huge, because one of my big prayers has been, when this starts taking off and people adapt to it, because inventors love it, they want their free will. When that happens, how do I get this to achieve a critical mass so we can actually make the leap? Okay. And I realized indigenous sovereign funds, that's huge, because now that gives me a real critical mass capacity there between, not me, but the dynamic itself. Because I was always seeing it as individual inventors and doing it kind of a longer process like that. Then the sovereign funds come in, and again, reinforced again that sovereign revenue trust entity. People were perceiving that as a sovereign fund. It's like, well, I don't have any experience in sovereign funds. I've been in the venture scene. So I've been guided and helped with that to understand how I can bring in these pieces with the sovereign fund. We're actually bringing in and co-creating a military grade software system as well that's going to be tied to this that can help monitor the transition and the evolution of the technology itself, creating economies of scale, all kinds of different things. So it's getting all these legs to it now that I really hadn't anticipated. And it's interesting because I wrote 2 books. I'm going on, I apologize, but it is my passion. I wrote 2 books and I'm waiting on the 3rd to finish that because this whole piece, I knew other stuff was coming and I couldn't complete that 3rd book of this trilogy yet until this piece has come in. And I'll stop there. But that's
That
where
is
we are.
just an unbelievable basis for conversation and extremely exciting. I've got a literal list of questions here. We don't have time for all of them, but one of the questions I do have, you hinted at a moment ago, you were talking about economies of scale. That's a fundamental redefinition for the audience out there. I think in layman's terms, you're talking about a redefinition of the economic landscape and the need to scale the new economic landscape to meet the demand and, in some regards, the requirements that are currently on the old landscape. And so a certain amount of disjointing, I think, is likely to come in such a process. Can you speak to how, or is it even possible to speak to how the sovereign revenue trust entity may impact the death of the corporation?
Oh, that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. I would say that that's really, I never thought about that. That's fun.
I
The death of,
apologize. We don't script our
no, no,
questions
no.
here on
I'm
Q&P.
taking it. Just bear with me as I reflect about that because that's a great question. I would say that the corporations that we've set up now, how they got started really was this endless merger acquisition after 100 years. You've got 4 or 5 very, very large multinationals kind of dictating to the rest of the world how we're going to live on this planet. And that's not boding well for human freedom, free will, any of those things. And it's certainly not a balanced dynamic. And the death of the corporation, I would say that it's a recalibration of the value system through which we create companies around technologies with the honoring of the inventor and the creator. It is such a huge leap in consciousness around what we're valuing. Right now, the monetary system is always about how much money you can make. And I don't have any problem with people making money. Lots of profit is great, but it can't be at the exploitation of our creators. And so with that rebalance, it'll be something I think we actually live into. I'm going to have to think about that somewhere. That's really intriguing. You got me.
Well, fundamentally, it's really a fascinating point to ponder because as we witness
Yeah.
the passing of that defunct, bankrupt, dead corporate entity that is the U.S. government, the facade that has masqueraded over the last certainly 120 years or so, going back to the post-Civil War days, it makes a lot of sense that the economic systems within that same dead entity would themselves either shrink or die or inflate to the point of bursting. And I think we're seeing a great deal of that, especially in the last 18 months, that has accelerated the need for the thinking and the philosophizing around something like the sovereign revenue trust entity. And that takes me into my next question regarding that, which is the overall philosophy.
Hold on just for a moment, because you're really
Absolutely. Yes,
tapping in
please.
when you're talking at the end of the corporation. That's a whole nother topic as far as the nation, because we're going to a true republic, or we're back at a true republic. But the whole key through this whole thing was had hegemony throughout all these systems: military, economic, nation to nation. And so what we really are going to be contributing to that is also the ending of hegemony against our creators. Because I've watched a lot of technologies that are here that can address a lot of problems that we're all concerned about on this planet, taking care of this planet around us, right? But also each other, and honoring those, building relationships. We're in relationship to everything. Okay. Again, I worked with this quantum physicist. I learned the interconnectedness of everything. It truly is. There is no separation, and everything is conscious on the electron level. Okay. When you really grok that, it changes your whole worldview. But I remember him telling me, everything you know is a lie. Everything you've ever learned is a lie. And it's like, I thought he was nuts. Honestly, in the beginning, I thought, what are you talking about? Everything's a lie. Well, he was right on. And I didn't realize the magnitude of that, and what that actually meant. And as we're all waking up to all of this, it's really shocking to realize all of that. And as angry as you can get through it, for me, it's like, all right, at least I know what the game is now. I know what the situation is, and how do we actually strategize to rectify our boat and get it on track again? But it's ending that dynamic of hegemonic mentalities, I suppose, for corporations, for against inventors, amongst nations. I mean, it's big stuff we're talking about here. And right, the finance industry has always been I've really come to understand with all the research and all of this that I've put into, this is a 20-year gig for me, a 20-year mission. When this started 23 years ago, actually, this week, September 11th, coming up. And that's when this all started for me. And it just dawned on me this morning, actually, it was 23 years. Wow. I realized that we've always known money is the root of all evil, but how do you actually fix that? Because, people are just trying to get by in their own lives. We're all busy judging each other and not having good feelings about each other. But, I feel like we've all been played. We've all been played with most of humanity, in my opinion, excluding some exceptions. Okay. Not talking about that, but the rest of humanity has profound intention and goodwill to have a good life, to do well by their families and their relationships and the people that they love, and they want to bring something good to this world before they leave. And so the systems we set up in place to enable that to happen weren't in those interests. They were in some other interests. So let's just get wise about it. It's like, just fix it. So as all these people coming from these different angles are so important, because we can come together and realize, okay, all these different perspectives are so important as we come together to co-create this new direction. It's really an evolution of finance, as far as, I mean, that's the name of my books, but it really is an evolution because it's a shift in consciousness in what we honor.
An evolution of finance and an evolution of lifestyle. You sort of stole the question anyway out of my own lips. Uh,
Sorry.
and that ties me, no, absolutely. I very much appreciate, the congemity there. And, moving into my last question here, it deals more with the character of the human being. The sovereign revenue trust entity and this design and construct that you essentially have pioneered. I think it stands to really reshape a great deal of economic, not only machination, but the fundamental behaviors of the human beings engaged in the economic process that are directly involved with this. So, with that, who are, or perhaps what is a better way to say it, the ideal candidate in the form of an inventor, an innovator, someone seeking to bring, inspiration to the world? Who is the ideal candidate for the sovereign revenue trust entity?
I love your questions. I initially started it. I actually created it for this French quantum physicist. He's 10 to 15 years ahead of people as far as electromagnetic innovation. And I watched what happened for him, and I realized, again, initially it was designed for people bringing the true sacred technology that will help make the leap. I really, it's where we started initially there. But then I realized, as I said, also, we're all creators. We're all creating, and it's really what we're here to do. We're co-creating with God and with each other. And you have to have a place where that's safely held, stewarded, all of that. And as you do that, on the other hand, when you direct all the energy towards a particular outcome with that inventor's whatever they envisioned, you increase the efficiencies big time. I learned that on the electron level with the physicist. Mechanical and electrical and chemical efficiencies, you shift entropy, and you're able to get these incredible efficiencies. And I see that absolutely transmuting into the financial sector. And I would say anybody, initially it's going to be higher, more evolved technology initially, but I don't want to limit it there, because I think, going back to what I was saying earlier, as far as we're all creators and we're all bringing things, and we need just a different mindset about how we honor that. And as we do that, we really can make a different, a whole trajectory shift in where we're going with humanity. But the biggest thing too is as I designed this, I really wanted to get away from the security. There's securities and commodities, right? And there's certain regulations for that. And what I also never liked in finance was that only certain people could invest in in entrepreneurial stuff, but you can go to the stock, you can play in the stock market, you can play in the casino. Nobody cares if you lose your shirt and your house and everything else there, but by God, you can't participate in the entrepreneurial stuff. And so that always felt so arbitrary to me. And it's like, all right, if this can be more as a commodity and a non, yeah, just as a commodity of sorts, it's really its own structure, honestly. But if I can get outside of that, then I can open this up to everybody being able to participate, and not just a few wealthy people on the planet that can participate in the entrepreneurial realm, that we can all contribute together, we all create together. This is an ongoing conversation that I want to be having. But it's really about serving all of humanity. We all get to participate and support our evolutionary track, you know, and the joy of creation. I mean, we could be having so much more fun than we are right now. And I really want to ask us to consider really considering a new grand experiment almost. It's like, what would love look like in finance? What would love look like in finance? Nobody's ever done that. What an audacious statement, right? It's all about money, right? But no, it's if we brought love into this through honoring creation and loving each other and what we can each bring to the party, what would that look like? What kind of world would we be living in? Entirely different, is my guess.
One may argue peace on earth. You know, just audacious a statement enough for the Great Awakening itself. Miss Guth, I have to say this has been one of the more exhilarating conversations I've had in quite a while. For patriots out there that would like to learn a little bit more or connect with you, maybe personally, and work on some projects together, if such an alignment exists, where can they go to look you up and to reach out?
Actually, I'm on LinkedIn, Barbara Guth under Sagesse Holdings LLC on LinkedIn. I'm also, my email is barbara@sagessesrte.com. And I have two websites. One is The Evolution of Finance, all one word, theevolutionoffinance.com. And then sagessesrte.com is also another website kind of explaining this. But it really does impact the venture scene. It impacts really this, you can actually create a whole parallel, I suppose, to the stock market where you have a system that's not driving greed. Again, you've got greed and tyranny. All of these things are kind of tied in together. If you're incentivizing through the blockchain, protecting that, and then also changing the intention, you can sidestep a whole lot of stuff that has been the bane of existence for humanity for centuries. So I really appreciate your time today, SG, and I just am so appreciative of where we are and understanding that even though we're going to have a lot of challenging moments with this transition, there's a lot of hope. I've met incredible souls from around the world that are deeply committed and totally understand that this shift needs to take place. And I'm in discussions about how to get that done. And this platform is an opportunity through which that can transpire. Not the only one, but it is one. So
Absolutely incredible. Please keep me abreast of your progress. And for the audience out there, you have heard it here on Q News Patriot. Miss Guth, thank you very much again for joining me today. I'll be back with the
thank you
audience out there again soon on the Q News Patriot. God bless
so
everyone.
much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.